There comes a moment in life when you feel like you've been misunderstood, mistreated, or even betrayed. People may have lied about you, slandered your name, or tried to bring you down, but you have to understand this: God has seen everything. The people who tried to hurt you, the ones who spoke ill of you, the ones who plotted behind your back, they may think they are getting away with it, but God sees all. You may wonder, when will justice be served? When will they face the consequences of their actions? Here's the truth: God doesn't need you to fight your own battles. He doesn't need you to waste your energy on revenge or retaliation. God is the ultimate judge. He knows the truth, and He will expose it. You don't need to lift a finger. You don't need to say a word. God will deal with them in His time, and He will do it in a way that will leave you amazed. When God decides to act, He does so in ways you can't even begin to imagine. He has a way of showing people the truth about themselves, of revealing the hidden motives in their hearts, and doing it all in front of your very eyes. You won't have to say anything, because the truth will speak for itself. God will roast them in front of you, not to harm them, but to show that He is your defender, that He is your protector, and that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. What you must understand is that when you are aligned with God's purpose, He will take care of everything that comes against you. You don't have to fight to prove your worth. Your worth is established in God. Your reputation is in His hands, not in the hands of those who try to tear you down. He will show them who you are, not through your words, but through His actions. When God roasts your enemies, He will do it publicly in front of all who have witnessed your pain. He will vindicate you and remind everyone that no one can touch His chosen without facing His wrath. You may not see it today, and you may not understand why things are happening the way they are, but trust this: God's timing is perfect. The same people who thought they could destroy you, the ones who thought they could hurt you without consequence, will soon be forced to see that God was with you all along. His favor will be on you, and no one will be able to deny it. Stay focused on your purpose. Stay strong in your faith. God's justice is coming. When He decides to act, when He decides to reveal the truth, He will do it in such a powerful way that even your enemies will have no choice but to acknowledge the greatness of God in your life. And when that happens, you will realize that you didn't need to fight. God had already won the battle for you. God sees everything. You may think that what you're going through is unnoticed, that the people who have wronged you are getting away with their actions, but that's far from the truth. There's nothing that happens in your life, whether good or bad, that escapes God's attention. He watches over you, He watches over them, and He sees all the schemes, all the lies, and every malicious intent. No matter how quiet your suffering may seem, God is aware. The people who hurt you, who've spoken ill about you or tried to tear you down, God sees it all. We often fall into the trap of thinking that if no one else notices our pain, then maybe it doesn't matter. But that's not the case. God is not blind to your struggles, and He is not indifferent to your heartache. He is a righteous judge who understands every detail of the situation, even those moments you think no one else saw. God is not only aware of the actions of others, but also the intent behind them. He sees the hidden motives that others may have, the things they've done in the darkness, and the ways they've tried to undermine you when you weren't looking. And the most powerful thing you need to understand is that God doesn't just see your suffering, He is moved by it. God is a just God, and He is not going to allow injustice to go unpunished. When someone does wrong by you, He knows exactly what's happening and what needs to be done to bring righteousness back into the situation. He doesn't need anyone's help to see the truth. You don't have to explain it to Him. He is fully aware of the situation, of everything that has happened, and most importantly, He is aware of you. He knows your heart. He knows your integrity. He knows that you've been faithful, and He knows that you haven't sought revenge or tried to get back at those who hurt you. God's knowledge is not just surface level. His understanding is profound, and He sees through every attempt to deceive or manipulate. While others may be blinded to the truth, God is always fully aware. When you feel like you're fighting battles alone, you need to remember that God sees it all. He knows the truth, and nothing can hide from Him. Whether it's a public display of betrayal or a quiet moment of hurt, God sees it. And His justice is never far behind. So don't ever think that your pain is invisible or your struggles unnoticed. God sees everything, and He will take action in due time. You don't need to fight. This is one of the most liberating truths you'll ever come to understand. You see, too often we find ourselves caught in the struggle, trying to right the wrongs that have been done to us. We think that we must fight back, defend ourselves, or get even in some way, but God is telling you today that you don't need to do that. He has already taken care of it. It's not your battle to fight. Your responsibility is not to get entangled in the plans of your enemies, but to trust in God's ability to handle the situation. When people wrong you, it's natural to want to defend yourself. It's natural to feel that you have to show everyone who you really are, to clear your name, or to make others see the truth about you. But here, this clearly your defense doesn't come from your words, your actions, or your reactions, or your reactions. It comes from God. God is your defender. You don't need to lift a finger to prove anything to anyone. He is your shield. The Bible says in Psalms 91:4 that he will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. This means you are already protected, already covered by the power of God. You don't have to fight back. God has already got you covered. When you trust God with your battles, you are acknowledging that he is in control. It means that you believe in his power to handle situations in ways you cannot even imagine. You don't have to resort to the ways of the world, revenge, manipulation, or even justification. God knows the truth, and he will expose it at the right time. He doesn't need your help to sort things out. Too often we exhaust ourselves trying to fight battles we were never meant to fight. We end up losing energy, peace, and joy in the process. But God is saying, let me fight for you. Imagine this: you are walking through life, doing what God has called you to do, staying true to your purpose. As people try to tear you down, criticize you, or make false accusations against you, all you need to do is stay focused. Don't lose sight of your mission. God will step in and deal with those who come against you. In his time, he will silence your accusers, he will expose the truth, and he will defend your integrity. You are not called to waste your time arguing with people who have no desire for reconciliation or truth. God didn't create you to spend your energy on fights that have already been won. Remember that when God is your defender, he doesn't need anyone's permission to act. He doesn't need you to fight on his behalf. All he asks of you is to trust him, to keep your heart pure, and to walk in faith. Leave the fighting to him. Trust in his justice, far greater than anything you could accomplish on your own. God's timing is perfect. When you feel like everything is falling apart, when you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and no one seems to notice or care, it can be easy to question when things are going to change. You may wonder, when will this injustice end? When will the truth come to light? When will God step in and make everything right? But here's the key: God's timing is always perfect. He doesn't operate on your schedule or mine. He operates on his divine plan, which is designed for your good. The reason we often struggle with God's timing is because we are too focused on the immediate. We want things to change now, and we want our enemies to be exposed today. But God sees the bigger picture. He knows what you need and when you need it. He understands that sometimes the delay in justice is not a sign of neglect, but a setup for something greater. God doesn't just deal with the surface level issues, he addresses the root causes. He knows what will ultimately bring the most glory to his name and the greatest benefit to you. The process may take time, but every step is purposeful. Every delay is significant. Sometimes God allows things to unfold slowly, not because he's unwilling to help, but because he's preparing you for what's coming. You may not see it now, but God is aligning circumstances, moving pieces, and setting things in place so that when he acts, it's a victory that will leave no doubt that it was his doing. Trust in this God will never be late. He will step in at the precise moment when you are ready, when the situation has reached the point where he can show his power most profoundly. And let's be clear, God doesn't forget about you just because things aren't moving at the pace you want. He's working in ways you can't always see. While you're waiting, he's making sure that your enemies are setting themselves up for exposure. While you're praying for things to change, he's orchestrating the events that will bring the truth into the open. In your waiting, God is still working. He's not inactive. He's not distracted. He's actively positioning you and your circumstances so that when he moves, it will be undeniable that he's been in control all along. You may be tempted to take matters into your own hands when you don't see immediate results, but that's when you have to trust that God is doing something far greater than you can comprehend. When it's time for God to act, it will be evident to all, and it will be worth the wait. His timing will not only bring justice, but will also reveal his glory in ways that will strengthen your faith and the faith of others. So wait with expectation. Your breakthrough, your moment of vindication is coming. God's timing is always perfect, and when he steps in, everything will fall into place exactly as it should. Justice will be served. You might not see it right now, but I want to remind you of a powerful truth. God's justice is never delayed, and it is always executed in the perfect way. When people harm you, when they slander you, when they try to destroy your reputation or stand in the way of your purpose, God doesn't turn a blind eye. He sees everything, and he knows exactly what needs to happen. There will come a moment when God will step in and justice will be served in a way that only he can do. You don't need to take matters into your own hands, because God, who is the righteous judge, is already preparing to deal with those who have wronged you. They may seem to prosper in the moment, but their victory is fleeting. They may think they've gotten away with their actions, but God will make sure that justice is executed. His justice is not like the world's justice, which can be manipulated or distorted. God's justice is always perfect, and it is always timely. The beauty of God's justice is that it doesn't just expose the wrongs of others, but it brings about a restoration for you. God's justice restores what was lost, and it sets things right in a way that you cannot do on your own. When God steps in, he does it in such a way that everyone will see that he has been your defender all along. He will bring to light what was hidden in the darkness. Those who hurt you, those who thought they could get away with their actions, will have no choice but to face the truth. But remember, God's justice is not about revenge. It's about restoring balance, revealing truth, and vindicating his people. This is a promise you can stand on. Those who have wronged you will face the consequences. They may try to cover their tracks. They may attempt to manipulate the situation, but God knows the truth. He will not allow the righteous to be left standing in shame. When the time is right, he will act, and when he does, it will be undeniable. People will see the truth unfold before their very eyes. God's justice will serve as a testimony to his power, his righteousness, and his faithfulness to his children. It is important to understand that God's justice isn't about you getting back at people. It's about his righteousness being made manifest. When justice comes, it will be for your good. It will reveal God's character, and it will reveal to the world that he has been walking with you through the storm. You don't need to carry the weight of the situation. You don't need to be burdened by the desire to make things right on your own. Trust that God is already working behind the scenes, and when the time comes, his justice will not only right the wrongs, but will elevate you in a way that brings him glory. And when that happens, you will know without a doubt that God was with you all along, and his justice will always prevail. Your enemies will be exposed. You may have been carrying the weight of false accusations, lies, and betrayal, feeling as though the truth will never come to light. But here's something you must understand. God has a way of bringing what's hidden into the open. Those who have worked in the shadows to tear you down, to spread false narratives, or to hurt you in ways that others can't even see, God will expose them. The very things they've done in secret, the things they thought they could hide from the world, will be brought into the light. God sees the intentions behind their actions, and when the time is right, he will make it known to all. Exposing your enemies is not about revenge, it's about revealing the truth. It's about making sure that justice is done, that the lies are dismantled, and that the people who have tried to deceive others at your expense are shown for who they really are. They may have thought they were clever, that they were hiding behind lies or manipulation, but there's nothing hidden that God cannot uncover. The truth always has a way of coming to the surface, and when God is the one orchestrating the exposure, it will be done with power, precision, and in his perfect timing. When your enemies are exposed, it's not only a victory for you, it's a testimony of God's faithfulness. It's a declaration that he watches over his children and that he will defend those who are faithful to him. You don't have to worry about how things will turn out or whether the truth will be revealed. Trust that God will take care of it. The same way he brought light into the world, he will bring light into your situation. revealing the hidden things and setting the record straight. God's exposure isn't just for the sake of showing others who is wrong. It's also for your protection and healing. When your enemies are exposed, it ensures that no one else will be hurt by their lies, their deceit, or their malicious actions. It brings closure to a chapter that may have been holding you back, and it frees you from the grip of fear or confusion that their hidden actions may have caused. You don't have to be afraid of the unknown anymore. God will reveal the truth, and in doing so, He will set you free. And remember, this exposure doesn't always come in dramatic public ways. Sometimes God's revelation of the truth happens quietly through the gentle unveiling of hidden motives, through circumstances that make the truth undeniable. Other times it may happen in a more direct way, where everything comes to light all at once. Whatever form it takes, know this: God will make sure that your enemies are exposed. He will ensure that the lies they've told, the wrongs they've committed, and the pain they've caused will be revealed in His perfect time. You don't have to live in fear of their power or influence. You don't have to wonder when they will strike next or if their manipulation will succeed. God is the one who holds the ultimate power, and when He exposes your enemies, there will be no question about who has been in control all along. They will be left to face the consequences of their actions, and you will stand as a witness to God's sovereignty, knowing that He has defended you. Your enemies will fall. When God decides to defend you, when He steps in to expose the lies and bring justice to your situation, there is nothing your enemies can do to stand against His power. You might feel as though they have the upper hand, that they are in a position of strength or influence, but I want to remind you of something important. No one can stand against God's will. When God moves on your behalf, no weapon formed against you will prosper. It doesn't matter how powerful your enemies seem or how many people they have on their side. When God decides that it's time for them to fall, they will fall. This is the reality of divine justice. It's not just about righting a wrong, it's about showing the world that God's power is unmatched. When God rises to defend His children, He brings everything to bear against those who have set themselves against His will. The proud, the arrogant, the ones who thought they could hide behind their deceit, they will see that God is bigger than their schemes. Their plans will be brought to nothing, and their attempts to tear you down will fail. It's not your fight to win, it's God's fight to win. And when He fights for you, victory is assured. There is something incredibly freeing about knowing that your enemies cannot win. It takes the pressure off of you to defend yourself. It removes the fear that somehow their power, their manipulation, or their influence can overcome you. It's a reminder that God is sovereign over all, and no matter what it looks like in the moment, He has the final say. Your enemies may appear to be winning temporarily, but their victory is fleeting. They may laugh and think they've succeeded, but their downfall is inevitable when God steps in. God's justice does not fail. When He decides to deal with those who have wronged you, He does it in such a way that their downfall serves as a testament to His righteousness. There are no loopholes, no escape routes, no way to evade the consequences of their actions. Every evil deed they've done, every dishonest word they've spoken, and every malicious action they've taken will come back upon them. They will fall, not because of your actions, but because God has determined that their time has come. This doesn't mean that you should wish harm on them or take joy in their downfall. On the contrary, God's justice is about restoration, not revenge. It's about making things right, about bringing balance back into the world. Your enemies will fall not because of your desire for retribution, but because God is bringing about His perfect will. He will ensure that they face the consequences of their actions, and as they fall, you will rise. Your vindication will not come through your own efforts, but through God's intervention. As your enemies fall, God will lift you up. He will honor you, and He will demonstrate His power and His faithfulness in ways that leave no room for doubt. You may not see it right now, but know that the seeds of your victory are being planted. Your enemies may seem strong, but their foundation is built on sand. And when the storm comes, it will be washed away. In the end, it will be clear to everyone that God has the final word. You don't have to fight. You don't have to fear. You don't have to worry. God is in control, and He will ensure that your enemies fall before Him, leaving you standing strong in His victory. Your enemies will never prosper. You may look around and see the evil ones flourishing, seemingly getting away with their wrongdoings, and you may even wonder if they will ever face the consequences of their actions. But hear me when I tell you that God has a way of ensuring that those who work against his children will never prosper in the long run. The temporary success they may experience is just that, temporary. Their so-called prosperity is fleeting, and God has a way of turning things around in an instant. You may see your enemies rise, but what you need to understand is that no one can thrive at the expense of God's people for long. God's word is clear. He will not allow the wicked to ultimately prosper. It might seem like they're gaining ground today, but God knows their heart. He sees their motives. He knows what they're doing in secret, and in his perfect timing, he will ensure that their efforts are thwarted. They may appear to be winning, but the foundation of their victory is built on deceit, lies, manipulation, and injustice. And just like a house built on sand, it cannot stand. The world may reward them for their actions, but their reward is temporary. God's justice is eternal. When God decides to step in, no matter how much wealth, power, or influence your enemies have accumulated, it will be made clear that all their prosperity was built on unstable ground. God will allow the wicked to fall into their own traps. The very schemes they created to hurt you, the lies they told to tear you down, will be the ones that undo them. It is only a matter of time before they experience the consequences of their actions. God will not allow their ill-gotten gains to last. He will not allow them to continue to operate in their sin without facing the results. He will expose the corruption, the evil, and the deceit, and in doing so, he will remove the illusion of prosperity. Their success will turn to ash in their hands when God's justice prevails. Those who think they are above the law, above accountability, will be humbled. The system they built on lies will collapse, and they will find themselves with nothing to stand on. What you need to remember is that this is not just about God punishing those who have wronged you. This is about God demonstrating his power and sovereignty. He allows no one, not even the wicked, to stand in the way of his will. He will bring them to a place where they are forced to acknowledge that he is the only true authority. They may have believed they could operate without consequences, but when God moves, they will realize that all their success was an illusion. You don't have to worry about how long they seem to last or how high they seem to rise. Their success is built on sand, and the waves of justice are coming. Their prosperity will not continue, and they will find themselves falling in the very places they thought they were invincible. They may have had their time in the sun, but that time is coming to an end. Trust in God's timing, because when he steps in, their success will turn to failure, and they will see that nothing is more powerful than the justice of God. God has seen the injustice, and he will make sure that their prosperity is only temporary. What they built on lies and manipulation will be torn down, and what they thought was secure will crumble. You do not need to be anxious, because you are on the side of the one who holds all power in his hands. In the end, it will be clear that God is in control, and the prosperity of the wicked will be no more. It is God's promise to you that your enemies will never prosper in the long run, and his justice will always prevail. Your enemies will be silenced. The world may look at their arrogance, their false claims, and their manipulation, and they might seem as though they have the upper hand, as though they have a loud voice and are winning the battle. They speak loudly, they spread their lies, and they try to drown you out with their false accusations. But what they don't know, what they fail to understand, is that when God decides it's time for them to be silenced, they will be silenced completely and utterly. God is not a God who watches his children suffer in silence forever. There comes a moment in time when he steps in, and when he does, it's like the roaring thunder that drowns out the small, hollow voices of those who seek to destroy you. They may have been speaking against you for years, spreading lies, twisting the truth, and manipulating others into believing their narrative. But when God decides it's time for them to be silenced, their words will fall to the ground. Their voices will lose their power, their influence will diminish, and the lies they have spoken will no longer hold weight. You see, the enemy may think that they can continue to talk over you, that they can continue to manipulate situations and twist your words, but they cannot out-talk God. They cannot outmaneuver God. They cannot continue to create chaos when God steps into the situation. There is a time when all the noise they've made will come to an end, and all the false accusations they've spoken will be proven false. And when that happens, their voice will be silenced, not because of anything you've done, but because of God's mighty intervention. When God steps in to silence your enemies, it's not just about stopping their words, it's about removing their influence. For too long, they may have been the ones with the loudest voice in the room, making decisions, turning people against you, and controlling the narrative. But when God decides it's time for them to be silenced, he doesn't just stop their mouths, he stops their ability to influence. He removes their authority, their credibility, and their power. And with that, they no longer have the ability to spread their lies, to hurt you, or to control others. They will be silenced by the weight of truth. The truth has a way of speaking louder than any lie ever could. And when God reveals the truth, when he makes it clear who has been in the right and who has been wrong, your enemies will have no words left. The truth will shut their mouths. They won't be able to defend themselves, and their false narrative will be exposed for all to see. They may have tried to speak over you to drown you out with their lies, but God will ensure that when the truth comes forth, it will be so loud, so undeniable, that their words will be powerless. This doesn't mean they won't try to speak again. It doesn't mean they won't try to spin their lies or manipulate others. But when God steps in to silence your enemies, their words will have no effect. No one will believe them anymore. Their lies will fall flat. The people they once convinced will begin to see them for who they truly are. The damage they tried to cause will be undone by the truth, and their voice will become irrelevant. In the face of God's justice, your enemies' voices will be quieted, and all the harm they tried to cause will be undone. They may continue to make noise for a while, but in the end, it will be clear that their words no longer matter, their power is gone, and their influence has faded. It's a reminder that no one can speak against God's children and go unpunished. When God decides to silence your enemies, their words will have no power, and the truth will reign supreme. Your enemies will face humiliation. There are times in life when it seems as though those who have hurt you, betrayed you, or sought to undermine you will get away with their actions. They may seem to prosper, they may walk with their heads high, and they may even appear to be untouchable. But what they fail to realize is that God's justice doesn't work on their timeline. God sees everything, and when the time is right, he will bring them to a place where their pride will be their downfall. Those who have wronged you will find that their arrogance is their undoing. Their attempts to belittle, manipulate, and discredit you will backfire. God will allow them to reach a place of high status, of seeming victory, only to have them fall from their position, stripped of their pride and power. It is God's justice that humbles the proud, and no one can remain in a place of exaltation if they have lived in pride, deceit, or betrayal. God allows us to experience humiliation as a way of exposing the truth. He will bring the wicked to a place where their schemes and their pride are put on full display. They may try to hide their wrongdoings, but when God moves, everything that was done in darkness will be revealed. Their lives will no longer be effective, their reputation will no longer hold, and they will be exposed for the true character they have shown behind the scenes. The truth will cause them to stumble, and their attempts to lift themselves up at the expense of others will collapse. It is important to understand that humiliation in this context is not about cruelty, it is about God's righteousness. When someone operates in a spirit of pride, trying to tear down others to make themselves look better, there will come a moment when they will be shown to the world for who they truly are. The very things they have done in the shadows will be brought to the light, and in that moment they will experience the weight of their actions. When God decides that it is time for your enemies to face humiliation, he will do so in a way that will leave no room for escape. They will not be able to defend themselves, and no excuse will be enough to save them from the consequences of their actions. Their reputation will be shattered, their influence will diminish, and they will find themselves in a position where they can no longer deny the truth of their behavior. The tables will be turned, and the ones who once held power over you will find themselves humbled and brought low. Humiliation, however, is not a punishment without purpose. It is a tool that God uses to restore order and truth. For those who have misused their power, For those who have caused harm with their words or actions, their moment of humiliation is an opportunity for them to face the consequences of their behavior. It is a moment where they must reckon with the choices they've made and come to terms with the fact that their actions were not only unjust, but ultimately unsustainable. God will use their downfall to bring them face to face with their pride and to show them the futility of their ways. And for you, the one who has been wronged, the one who has suffered in silence, know this, your vindication is coming. God will not allow the unjust to go unpunished forever. He will take what was meant for your harm and turn it into a testimony of his power. The humiliation of your enemies is a testament to God's justice. It is a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful or influential, can escape the consequences of their actions. When God brings them low, he lifts you up. He shows the world that those who trust in him will be exalted, while those who seek to harm others will be humbled. In the end, your enemies will not only face humiliation in front of you, they will be shown to the world as false, as deceitful, and as undeserving of the position they once held. And in that moment, when their downfall is complete, you will witness the truth of God's word that no one can stand against his justice and that he will always defend his children. Your enemies will suffer defeat, and it will be undeniable. There will be a time when it seems like they are winning, like they have the upper hand, and like they will never be brought down from their position. But let me tell you something powerful. God has the final say, and he is orchestrating a divine plan that will lead to their ultimate downfall. It may look like they are standing tall now, but when God moves, their victory will be short-lived and their defeat will be absolute. The defeat of your enemies is not just about them losing the battle. It's about them being completely overthrown, their schemes unraveled, and their efforts rendered futile. They may have built their empire on lies, deceit, or manipulation, but when God's judgment falls, that empire will crumble. It's not just about them losing in a moment or in one area. It's about the entire structure they built being torn down. Every false plan, every evil intention, every plot they set in motion to hurt you will come to nothing. Their strength will fail them, and they will find themselves unable to stand against the power of God's justice. You might look at the situation right now and wonder, how is this even possible? How can I ever see my enemies defeated when they seem so powerful? But don't be deceived by appearances. The enemy thrives on making you believe that their power is unshakable. They want you to feel small, to feel helpless, to believe that there's no way out. But that is a lie. God is bigger than any enemy you may face, and he will not allow your enemies to continue with their plans unchecked. He will turn the tables on them in a way that leaves no doubt who the true victor is. Their defeat will be complete because God doesn't just defeat the enemy in a partial way. He does so in a way that leaves no room for argument or denial. When God rises up to defend his people, he takes away every advantage the enemy thought they had. He takes away their power, their influence, and their ability to deceive others. What they thought was secure will be exposed as fragile, and their strength will be shown to be weak. It won't just be a temporary defeat. It will be a full, undeniable defeat that removes their ability to ever rise again. This defeat is not just a punishment for them. It is a declaration of God's sovereignty. It's a declaration that no one can oppose God's children and prosper. It's a statement that no matter how hard your enemies try, they cannot overcome God's plan for your life. Their defeat is a testimony to God's faithfulness to you. It will show the world that those who rise up against the righteous will never have the last word. It's proof that God is your defender and that he will fight for you in a way that guarantees victory. God's plan for your enemies is to bring them to a place where they can no longer deny that they have been defeated. The very things they try to use against you will be the things that lead to their downfall. Their plans will backfire, their lies will be exposed, and the very things they thought would bring them success will be the instruments of their defeat. God will use what they meant for harm and turn it around so that it becomes the very thing that brings them down. Their defeat will be public. The world will see it, and no one will be able to deny what God has done. The same way they tried to discredit you, to tear you down, and to hurt you in front of others, God will turn the situation around so that they are publicly humbled, defeated, and exposed. The very people they manipulated will see their true nature, and those who once followed them will turn away. It will be a moment of clarity for all, showing that no one can stand against God's children and come out victorious. So do not be disheartened by the current circumstances. Don't let the enemy's temporary success deceive you into thinking they will win. Their defeat is coming, and when it comes, it will be undeniable. It will be so clear, so complete, that no one will be able to question that God has stepped in. Your enemies will be brought low, their plans will be shattered, and you will stand in the victory that God has promised. Remember, God is always on the side of justice, and his justice will never fail. In conclusion, know this: God is always watching, and his justice is sure. While your enemies may seem to triumph for a moment, their victory will be short-lived, for God's power is greater than any force they could ever muster. The schemes they have devised to harm you will ultimately fail, and their defeat will be undeniable. God will expose their pride, humiliate their arrogance, and bring them low in front of all who once thought they were untouchable. As you wait for God's justice, remember that he is fighting for you. Your enemies will be humbled, their plans unraveled, and their defeat will be a testimony of God's righteousness. Trust that when God moves, no one can stand against his will. You are not alone in this fight. The victory is already yours, and in the end, your enemies will know that it was God who brought them down while he lifted you up. Keep your faith strong, for God will roast them in front of you, and his justice will be perfect.